April 20th, 1945. Above Bavaria, southern Germany. The thin morning air at 12,000 feet bites with cold, but inside a Martin B-26 Marauder bomber, it's sweat and adrenaline. The whir of twin radial engines vibrates through the fuselage as a formation of U.S. bombers drones toward their target. In the top turret, Staff Sergeant William Winger, just 20 years old, grips the handles of his twin .50 caliber machine guns. This rookie aerial gunner scans the pale blue sky for threats, heart thumping against his flak vest. Suddenly, a glint of silver flashes behind the formation. Winger's eyes widen. Enemy fighters. But these aren't ordinary German planes. They're moving far faster than any he's seen. Alarms crackle over the intercom as Messerschmitt Me-262 jet fighters roar out of the clouds and dive onto the bombers. In an instant, all hell breaks loose. The rookie gunner swings his turret and opens fire, streams of tracer rounds arcing toward a streaking jet. The enemy Ace's cannons begin to glow in reply. In the next few heart-pounding seconds, the fate of an entire bomber crew will hinge on the courage and aim of an unlikely young gunner under fire. It is late World War II, and the Nazi war machine is on its last legs. By April 1945, Allied armies are closing in on Germany from all sides, American, British, and French forces to the west, Soviets to the east. The once feared Luftwaffe has been bled dry, its veteran pilots killed or exhausted, its fuel scarce, its conventional fighters largely neutralized after catastrophic losses in battles like the Ardennes and the failed New Year's Day attacks. Hitler's air force is crumbling, desperate to protect the fatherland. In a last gamble, Adolf Hitler orders his Wunderwaffen, wonder weapons, into the fray. Now, the Messerschmitt Me-262 Schwalbe, the world's first operational jet fighter, is Germany's final ace up the sleeve. Hitler had little choice but to play his final card in the form of the jet interceptor. The Me-262, with its twin jet engines and blistering 500+ miles per hour speed, can outrun any Allied fighter. It carries 4 nose-mounted 30mm cannons capable of shredding a bomber in seconds. This new jet squadron, Jagdwehrbahn 44, JV-44, is manned by the cream of the Luftwaffe's Experten, an elite all-star unit of Germany's top aces, men with dozens or even hundreds of kills to their names. They have been dubbed unstoppable by whispers in the ranks. Hitler's ace squadron, meant to be invincible in the air. But as our young bomber gunner will soon learn, even the deadliest weapon has its weaknesses. A Martin B-26 Marauder medium bomber in flight. By 1945, these fast twin-engine bombers were spearheading tactical missions for the U.S. 9th Air Force. Each Marauder carried up to 7 crew, including gunners manning multiple .50 caliber machine guns for defense. On this day, April the 20th, 1945, Hitler's own 56th birthday, the U.S. Army Air Forces launch a routine bombing mission into Bavaria. For the men of the 323rd Bombardment Group, 9th Air Force, the war seems almost won. Just 3 weeks from now, Germany will surrender. Though, of course, none can be certain of that yet. This morning's target is a rail yard and airfield near Memmingen, Germany. The 300-ton 23rd B-26 Marauders, nicknamed Widowmakers, early in the war for their treacherous handling, now have a solid reputation as tough, stable bombers that can deliver precision strikes. A formation of 48 Marauders lumber into the sky from their base in newly liberated France. Among them is a plane borrowed from another squadron, a war-weary B-26F known as the Ugly Duckling. In the cockpit sits First Lieutenant James Jim Vining, the 20-year-old aircraft commander flying his 40th combat mission. He's one of the youngest bomber pilots in the unit, but a capable leader. In the glass nose, a bombardier readies his Norden sight. In the fuselage, the rest of the crew, navigator, radio operator, and gunners like Staff Sergeant Winger go through their checklists. Briefing that morning had been upbeat, Intelligence officers assured the crews that German aerial resistance had all but collapsed. By spring 1945, Allied fighters roamed German skies at will. It's been weeks since the Marauders saw serious fighter opposition. Expect flak, but no fighters, they were told. Nonetheless, whispers about enemy jets made the rounds. The men had heard rumors of Nazi wonder weapons, vengeance rockets, jets, but few bomber crews had seen a Me-262 yet. As insurance, each B-26 carries an armament of up to 12 Browning .50 caliber machine guns, flexible guns in the dorsal turret, ventral position, and waist windows, plus 4 fixed forward-firing guns in the nose for strafing. They're ready to put up a wall of lead if anything comes at them. Still, as the formation crosses into Germany, it feels like just another milk run. Vining even jokes with his co-pilot about the so-called jets. "If I ever see one of those Me-262s, I might just turn and chase it," he laughs, not dreaming he'll have to make good on that boast. In the back, Sergeant Winger, new to the unit, takes a deep breath and peers out his turret at the patchwork of Bavarian fields passing below. The mission should be over in a couple of hours, and with any luck, he'll be back in France by lunch. The target is near. Approaching Memmingen just before 10 a.m., the Marauders tighten up and descend to their bombing altitude. Vining's formation levels off and opens bomb bay doors. It will be a 4-minute steady bomb run, flying straight and level. Flak begins to pepper the sky, black puffs rocking the planes. Up front, Lieutenant Vining focuses on keeping formation through the turbulence. The initial point EIP is reached, the final turn before bomb release, near the town of Kempten. As rehearsed, the B-26 groups spread out slightly, each 6-plane flight adjusting to drop their payloads in trail. In his turret, Winger scans for threats one more time and sees only the reassuring shapes of neighboring bombers. None of the men realize that 20,000 feet above them, twin-tailed predators are already positioning to strike. Unseen and unheard, over a dozen Me-262 jets from Jagdverband 44 have spotted the bomber stream and begun their dive. Leading them is the legendary Ace Adolf Galland, credited with 104 aerial victories. Galland, a household name in Germany, hand-picked this squadron of unstoppable aces to prove the Luftwaffe was still lethal. This morning, on Hitler's birthday, Galland is eager to deliver a deadly present by massacring an Allied bomber formation. The Americans below have no idea what's coming. Just as the first B-26s line up on the bomb run, disaster strikes from above. Galland's Me-262s scream down out of the sun, cannons blazing. The attack is perfectly timed. The bombers are vulnerable, stuck flying straight toward the target. In an instant, chaos erupts. "It happened right in front of us," Lieutenant Vining recalls. Galland's 4-ship jet formation slashes into the leading flight of Marauders. The German ace zeroes in on a B-26 piloted by First Lieutenant Dale Sanders, flying off Vining's wing. From 12 o'clock high, Galland's 30mm cannons thump out explosive shells. In seconds, Sanders' bomber is ripped apart. All hell broke loose, remembers Lieutenant Colonel Louis Rare, another pilot in formation. Pieces of fuselage and wing were flying all around us, along with smaller pieces that looked like confetti. An entire B-26 disintegrates in midair. Wings sheared off, engine flaming, debris showering down through the formation. Over the radio, panicked voices shout, "Bail out! Bail out!" But the stricken plane's crew never has a chance. Lieutenant Sanders and his 6 men go down with their aircraft, tumbling in flames toward the German countryside. In a matter of moments, 7 Americans are gone. A stunned jolt runs through the remaining crews. The unstoppable Ace Squadron has drawn first blood. Inside Ugly Duckling, Lieutenant Vining watches in horror as Sanders' Marauder falls away. His crew could be next. A split-second decision forms: fight back or die. Breaking every rule of bomber doctrine, Vining yanks the yoke and peels his B-26 out of formation, going on the offensive. It's a startling move. Bomber pilots are trained to hold formation and let their escorts and gunners handle attackers. But Vining knows no escorts are close, and the jets will chew them up one by one if he does nothing. He calls over the intercom, "Hang on, boys," and swings onto the tail of one passing Me-262. The B-26's nose houses 4 fixed .50 caliber guns, and now Vining lines up a firing solution, essentially using his bomber like a giant, slow fighter plane. Rat-tat-tat-tat. He squeezes the trigger, and a stream of tracers pours out ahead. One of Gallen's wingmen zips through the volley. Miraculously, Vining's burst finds its mark. The jet's left engine erupts in flames. The German pilot, caught by surprise, breaks off, trailing smoke. A cheer crackles over the radio. One Me-262 is hit, but triumph is short-lived. 3 more Me-262s now line up on Vining's lone bomber. He's isolated and a prime target. From the top turret, Sergeant Winger watches a jet arc upward, then swoop down at them from 6 o'clock high. "They're coming around again," he cries. Within seconds, 3 jets in 10-second intervals dive on Ugly Duckling's flight, attacking from the rear. The first B-262 hurtles in, guns thundering. Winger and the tail gunner let loose with furious defensive fire, tracers crisscrossing the sky. The jet zooms through, barely missing the lead bomber's tail. The second Me-262 follows right behind, braving the gauntlet of machine gun fire. As it flashes past, every American gunner in the formation, tail, waist, turret, is firing full blast. Dozens of 50-caliber bullets slam into the jet's fuselage and wings. The German pilot manages to clear the formation by a hair, but the third jet comes in too steep. Amid the firestorm, it fails to pull up in time. With a sickening crunch, the Me-262 collides with one of the Marauders. The enemy fighter shears through the B-26's right side propeller arc. Half of the Me-262's tail is torn clean off by the impact. The stricken jet tumbles out of control, its pilot, Unteroffizier Eduard Schallmoser, ejecting moments later. Schallmoser's parachute will deposit him, unbelievably, in his own mother's backyard, not far away, bruised and with a busted knee, but alive to enjoy a plate of her pancakes before hobbling back to base. The American bomber, by some miracle, survives the collision. Lieutenant James Hansen, its pilot, steadies his damaged plane, both engines somehow still running. A collective sigh of relief is short-lived, however. The melee is far from over. Across the formation, more jets and Marauders are entangled in a deadly dance. The German aces are making high-speed slashing attacks, exploiting their jets' superior speed and firepower. But they face a dilemma. To target a bomber, the Me-262s must slow down and fly relatively straight for a firing pass, leveling the playing field for a few crucial seconds. The American gunners, many of them green teenagers, seize those moments with tenacity and courage. B-26 gunners pour furious bursts at the attackers, creating walls of lead. Tracers zip past the German jets like glowing red needles. One by one, the Me-262 pilots realize they've dived into a hornet's nest. Many of the jets take hits in the running fight with Marauders, as crewmen later report. In one Marauder, Sergeant Edward Tiskiewicz, a turret gunner, remains at his guns even after shrapnel wounds his arm. With cool determination, he tracks a flashing Me-262 and fires. The jet pitches down, nose aflame. Moments later, Tiskiewicz swings on another target and scores a second kill, sending a second Me-262 spiraling earthward. For these feats, the young sergeant will later receive the Silver Star. The supposedly unstoppable ace squadron is now taking losses of its own. Back in Vining's B-26, the battle has turned into a bare-knuckle brawl. The bomber shudders as a 30mm shell bursts against it. One of the Me-262s has lined them up. Boom! An explosion in the cockpit knocks Lieutenant Vining's head back. A cannon shell punches through the windshield in a flash of light and smoke. Shrapnel screams through the cockpit. Vining feels a thud in his right leg. The control yoke jerks wildly. The starboard engine is hit and begins to windmill, dead. The B-26 lurches into a dive. For a dizzying moment, Vining is dazed, ears ringing, vision blurred. He registers wet warmth down his leg and glances down. His foot is hanging by threads of flesh, and his blood is pouring onto the cockpit floor. Shock numbs the pain, but he knows he's gravely wounded. With superhuman focus, Vining grabs the controls and hands them to his co-pilot. "You've got it," he shouts, relinquishing the yoke. The rookie co-pilot's eyes are wide with fear, but he nods and fights to steady the plunging aircraft. Vining feathers the damaged engine's propeller and jettisons the bomb load. 2,000 pounds of high explosives fall away, lightening the plane. Throttle back, rudder trim, hold her steady. He's operating on training and instinct now, trying to keep the Marauder from flipping over with one engine out. Inside the nose and fuselage, the crew hear the thud and feel the dive. They know their pilot's hit. The intercom crackles with shouts, but Vining, despite the agony coursing up his leg, stays clear-headed. He barks orders into the intercom. "Top turret, keep them off us. Waist gunners, watch our 6. Radio, get Mayday ready." He is effectively coordinating the defense while instructing his inexperienced co-pilot how to fly a one-engine landing. Sergeant Winger traverses his turret frantically, eyes darting for the next attacker. Two Me-262s regroup and make another pass at the faltering Marauder. "Here they come," someone yells. Vining calls, "Evasive action, now." The wounded pilot still manages to guide the co-pilot through a hard corkscrew dive, throwing off the German's aim. Cannons boom, shells rip past the tail, missing by a hair. Winger and the tail gunner unleash every last round in their belts at the second jet streaking by. The tracers catch its wing, and spark flashes along the fuselage. The Me-262 reels away, likely damaged. In the rear of the bomber, acrid smoke fills the compartments, and the smell of cordite and burnt metal chokes the men. The oxygen system is shot up. Everyone is on the verge of hypoxia from exertion at altitude. In the radio compartment, the operator rips off his headset's cord and sprints forward to the cockpit, doubling it as a makeshift tourniquet. He wraps it around Vining's shredded thigh and twists until the arterial bleeding slowed to a trickle. Vining grimaces but nods in thanks. That quick first aid might have just saved his life. After what feels like an eternity, the skies fall quiet. The Me-262s have broken off their attacks, low on fuel, and now chased by arriving American P-51 Mustang fighters. As one Marauder crewman later put it, the Mustangs came too little, too late. The bomber gunners had already done the grim work of surviving the onslaught. The German ace squadron, so confident at the start, is forced to withdraw, having shot down several bombers but losing at least 2 of their own jets to the bombers' fire and 1 more to the mid-air collision. The unstoppable JV-44 aces have been stopped cold in this attack, their ambush foiled at great cost. Now the immediate crisis for Lieutenant Vining's crew is keeping their own aircraft in the air. The B-26 Ugly Duckling is mortally wounded. 1 engine dead, the fuselage riddled with holes, the tail shredded. Control cables hang by threads. The plane lurches and wallows in the thin air. Vining is rapidly losing blood and fading in and out, but he refuses to let go of command. The co-pilot struggles to hold course for friendly lines. The bombardier has already dumped their bombs and now crawls back into the fuselage to help. Below, they spot patchy clouds and familiar terrain. They have drifted west toward Allied-controlled territory. The burning question, can they land this thing before it falls apart? Vining's vision blurs as shock and blood loss set in. At just 20 years old, he faces the very real possibility he won't live to see his 21st birthday, or the war's end. But he's determined to save his crew. Through gritted teeth, he instructs the co-pilot on emergency landing procedures. There's no time to reach an airfield. The B-26 can't climb over the looming ridges ahead. They're down to 3,000 feet altitude, and mountains of 3,500 feet block the path to the nearest airbase at Trier. Instead, they search for open ground, spying a flat-looking stretch of farmland near the village of Oberherren, Germany. Vining makes a fateful choice. "Prepare for crash landing," he calls. He orders the remaining crew to brace or bail out. For a moment, the men hesitate. They don't want to leave their wounded pilot. According to later accounts, Vining had to order them twice to jump, and still they refused. Ultimately, all 6 crew stay, determined to bring their skipper down alive or die by his side. Sergeant Winger leaves his turret and pulls Vining back from the controls as the co-pilot takes over for final approach. The B-26 comes in wheels up, skimming over a field of young spring crops. Just when it seems they might manage a rough skid to a halt, a hidden anti-tank ditch appears directly in their path. "Look out," is all there's time to shout. The Marauder's belly slams into the ditch at nearly 120 miles per hour, pancaking with a brutal, bone-crunching impact. The fuselage splits into 3 sections as it cartwheels to a stop. Silence. For a moment, nothing but the crackle of small fires and the ticking of cooling metal. Incredibly, most of the crew are alive. The co-pilot, bombardier, and others stagger out of the wreckage, bloodied and dazed, but intact. They immediately rush to the cockpit section, which has been torn open. Lieutenant Vining is found unconscious, barely alive, still strapped in with his leg horribly mangled. With hands trembling, his crew carefully pulls him from the crumpled seat. Tragically, Staff Sergeant Winger, the loyal top turret gunner, did not survive the crash. The violent jolt threw him against the turret housing, killing him instantly. The men pause only a moment to register the loss of their comrade. They know their pilot will die too, without immediate help. As fate would have it, help is miraculously near. The deafening battle in the sky has drawn attention on the ground. Within minutes, a group of U.S. Army medics, part of an armored unit advancing nearby, raced to the scene. They had watched the B-26 limp overhead, trailing smoke, and saw it go down. Now, these medics administer morphine and emergency first aid to Vining right there in the muddy field. He's in hypovolemic shock, no pulse, technically dead on arrival. But the medics refuse to give up. They stop the bleeding and get him breathing. As they load him onto a jeep for a 3-hour cross-country evac to the 15th Field Hospital in Metz, France, one doctor mutters, "It would have been easier to pronounce him dead." Yet against all odds, Jim Vining survives. Military surgeons amputate his right leg below the knee, but by sheer grit, he pulls through the operation. When VE Day, Victory in Europe, comes on May 8, 1945, Vining is recovering in a hospital bed, alive to see the Nazi surrender that he helped bring about. The air battle over Memmingen on April the 20th, 1945 goes down in history as a testament to the courage of ordinary airmen against extraordinary odds. The Luftwaffe's last ace squadron, manned by veterans with dozens of kills, failed to break the 323rd Bomb Group. Of the 48 Marauders, 3 were shot down by the Me-262 ambush, including Sanders and 2 others, and 1 more was so badly damaged it had to be written off after landing. But the rest completed the mission or limped home. Crucially, the B-26 gunners downed at least 2 Me-262 jets in that battle, and possibly damaged others, proving these invincible jets could indeed be hit and destroyed. Adolf Galland himself, though he escaped that day unscathed, would be wounded in action just a week later, and his JV-44 squadron effectively neutralized by war's end. The Nazi wonder weapon turned out to be too little, too late. A final card that could not trump Allied valor and numbers. As one post-mission report dryly noted, medium bombers were never a priority target for the German jets, and this costly attack showed why. The American bomber gunner, once the last line of defense, had proven to be a surprisingly effective giant killer in the skies. The Messerschmitt Me-262 Schwalbe jet fighter, Hitler's vaunted wonder weapon, Powered by twin jet engines, it was the fastest fighter of World War II. Its 30mm cannons could obliterate a bomber, but Me-262 pilots had to slow down and fly straight to aim, giving defensive gunners a brief chance to hit back. In the aftermath, First Lieutenant Jim Vining was awarded the Silver Star for his extraordinary heroism in the face of the jet attack. Despite losing his leg, Vining relearned how to walk and even fly with a prosthetic. He retired from the Air Force in 1946 as a captain and later served 30 years in the CIA. Remarkably, decades after the war, Vining would meet his one-time adversary Adolf Galland face to face. In a gathering of veterans, someone pointed out the famous German ace and whispered to Vining, "That man is a killer." Vining, remembering the deadly duel over Bavaria, simply shook his head. "I don't know what a killer might be," he reflected later. "I know it takes something unique to be a very good pilot. But am I a killer, as some called Galland? Number. That is not who I am." The war forced men like Vining and Galland into life-or-death decisions, but it did not strip away their humanity. In that respect, the young American gunner who stood his ground against Germany's top aces did more than just save his crew. He kept his soul intact. The sun sets over the quiet Bavarian fields, where pieces of metal and parachutes once rained down. The opening scene of our story, a frightened rookie bomber gunner facing off against an ace squadron, now fades into history, but its lesson endures. Bravery and teamwork turned the tables on a seemingly invincible foe. A 20-year-old American with a machine gun managed to help bring down Germany's unstoppable ace squadron, not by miracles or myth, but by grit, skill, and the will to protect his brothers in arms. In the larger canvas of World War II, the Me-262 ambush on April 20th, 1945, was a footnote, a final spasm of Nazi resistance soon overshadowed by Germany's collapse. Yet for those who lived it, it was a day of heroism and sacrifice never to be forgotten. The charred wreckage of jets and bombers testified that even the most feared weapons can be defeated when ordinary men refuse to yield. In the end, the ace squadron that thought itself unstoppable was stopped, not by superior technology, but by the steadfast courage of a few young airmen high over Bavaria. And as viewers, we are left with a powerful truth. In war, technology and aces may dominate the headlines, but it's the resolve of the common soldier, or the rookie gunner, that can ultimately shape history's outcome. Dramatic pause. On that spring day in 1945, high above a war-weary world, a lone bomber's guns spoke louder than the roar of jet engines, and a humble American crew earned their place in legend.